and restating the importance of bilateral relations, particularly British support for Israel. Now, these dimensions are significant. I don't want to at all diminish their importance. But nowhere did I hear or read about morality. And these lawfare cases, whether against Tzipi Livni or against General Doron Almog, who was flying to London to raise funding for an autistic camp that was important for him to build because he had a son who was autistic and who was not allowed to get off the plane because he was threatened with arrest. But these issues are fundamentally about morality, or I should say immorality. They exploit the principles, the language, the institutions, including the courts. They exploit the language of international law, to promote precisely the opposite, denying the Jewish people the basic rights of self-defense and sovereign equality. And more importantly than the peace process or bilateral relations, this is an attack on morality, and that has not been said loudly and clearly. The new anti-Semitism, directed at the Jewish collective rather than at Jews as individuals, is most virulent precisely where the language of morality is used most frequently and stridently. When university professors and students promote this agenda through Israel Apartheid Week, this must be denounced as immoral. When progressive journalists and media publish cartoons with Israeli leaders, including Tzipi Livni, that echo the images of Nazi Germany and Der Stürmer, this is immoral. When NGOs proclaiming to promote universal human rights and morality are silent when Gilad Shalit is held for over 3.5 years in Gaza, but they join with Libya and Iran on the Human Rights Council to lead campaigns using labels like war crimes and apartheid against Israel, this is fundamentally immoral. Recently, Robert Bernstein, the founder of Helsinki Watch, now Human Rights Watch, an NGO superpower with a $40 million a year budget, wrote a very painful op-ed in the New York Times denouncing his own organization for its contribution in helping turn Israel into a pariah state. And that's a quote from Robert Bernstein. Human Rights Watch's Middle East division is headed by veteran anti-Israel campaigners. And this behavior is first and foremost a moral travesty. Judge Richard Goldstone, who was on Human Rights Watch's board for many years, was silent in the face of such behavior, and that speaks for itself. Using moral language to single out the Jewish nation state, using double standards, also distorts the principles of universal human rights. It is directly contradictory to those universal values and makes them beyond recognition. As NGO Monitor's detailed research shows, Human Rights Watch, like some other groups, including Amnesty, devote far more resources to the isolation of Israel than to other areas, and is largely silent in the face of genocidal threats from Iran. This also turns human rights and morality into a travesty. Furthermore, campaigns to brand legitimate acts of self-defense against terror as war crimes and to label the Jewish state as an apartheid state serve to debase and trivialize the all too real instances of war crimes, apartheid, and racial hatred around the world. Self-proclaimed human rights groups that promote this agenda also undermine their claims to support democracy, gender equality, and minority rights. In this, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and others are not alone. Over 4,000 officials from 1,500 NGOs participated in the 2001 NGO Forum of the Durban Conference and adopted the strategy of demonization that we are talking about here at this conference. They lead the boycott campaigns, often receiving funding from governments under the label or the facade of civil society and international aid. Many, such as Oxfam, War on Want, Christian Aid, and their Canadian, Australian equivalents, may do good work elsewhere around the world, but they also promote the Durban agenda of boycotts and demonization, singling out Israel using false claims of war crimes and apartheid, collective punishment, and similar distorted moral and international legal terminology. To begin to restore the credibility and universality of these deeply damaged moral principles, we must end their exploitation and their use to demonize and delegitimize Israel. The 5 speakers that we have this morning all share a passionate commitment to this morality and to fighting that immorality and the abuse of these terms and these institutions. In this forum, none of the panelists need an introduction, and all clearly deserve more than 10 minutes that the schedule allows. Henry Kissinger was introduced as a man who needs no introduction, at which point he said, yes, but it's always nice to hear, so I'm going to try to find a compromise. Please excuse my brevity. As I said, each person who's going to speak deserves much more than 10 minutes just to introduce themselves and their accomplishments. Our first speaker is Minister Isaac Herzog, currently Minister of Welfare and Social Services, and in the past responsible for the portfolio on anti-Semitism, including in the period before the 2009 Durban Review Conference. Minister